Most people are not equipped to understand the seemingly endless facets of an HOA. That's why we're here, to help you become uncommonly prepared to serve your HOA. Whether you're a board member or a manager, join us in the Uncommon area.
Welcome to the Uncommon area. I am Matthew Holbrook, and this episode is all about what can we learn about HOAs from website analytics. And here to talk to me about that today and to discuss it is Brad Perry, Action's VP of Technology. So Brad, just to get the ball rolling on this, what would you say kind of are some general observations from the website analytics that we have at Action? What kinds of comments could you make about how things maybe have changed based on how the world has changed in recent years?
Yeah, well, in general, people are using the websites or our websites or websites in general more often than they were before. In many different ways.
Yeah, so that's our dramatic conclusion from this analysis.
I always
nobody knew, right?
To you. I always say, boom, I go right to it.
So, so obviously, people are using technology, they're using websites, they're using apps at a whole lot higher level than previous to the past couple of years. As we drill down into that further, are there any interesting trends or takeaways specifically as it relates to HOAs that we might be able to draw on?
Yeah, so a couple of things. One, the devices that they're using. So as you could expect, people are using phones more than they're using computers. We're not at the point to where phones are being used more than computers. Let me state that because there is still from our analytics standpoint for our websites and our resident portal, there's actually still more people using computers to access those websites than phones. What I'm saying is the rate of usage has increased exponentially over the last couple of years
for the phone. So the gap is narrowing.
The gap is narrowing, exactly.
So like when I think about the device usage, I guess I think of it in three categories. And is this the right way to think about it? You have computers, phones, and then tablets. Does it break up in that way?
Yeah, the analytics break up in that way, but it's becoming more and more prevalent that the phone and tablet are almost somewhat of a synonymous device. It's just the size of it, right? And really, to be even more technical, is the browser. Like for instance, on an Apple phone, is Safari typically, even though you can download Chrome. But they can differentiate the difference between a tablet and a phone. So yes, so and that's also what I'm referring to in regards to a mobile device. I'm categorizing a mobile device as a phone or a tablet. Okay. And separating it to a PC. So the growth of a phone and tablet is exponentially increasing over the last couple of years.
All right. So as I just think about that reality, what are the takeaways? And I kind of go in two different directions. One. From a development standpoint, having that in mind that people are going to be accessing whatever you develop on a mobile device at a much higher frequency than previously, and probably on a trajectory that's going to continue to increase in that way. That just has to be factored in from a development standpoint. And then secondly, it seems that opens opportunities for different types of technology applications, because more and more people are using things that are mobile, that allows for those applications to be applied maybe in ways and in places that you couldn't use if you were just using a computer. I guess am I thinking about it in the right way on those two things, or how would you respond?
Well, let me take the first part. Yes, in the sense that the devices that are being used, we need to take that in consideration when we're building the websites. So everything that we do at Action, from our corporate website to our resident portal to even applications that are only used internally for employees, we always design them with what is called responsive design. Responsive design means that depending on the device, the website shrinks and expands and is still viewable and accessible and usable on any device. A lot of people, from a technology standpoint, I don't want to get too technical in it, but one of the main products to do that is called Bootstrap. That's an actual programming language that does that. But the general term is called responsive design, and that makes sense if you kind of think about that. It responds to the device. So to finish that point is that everything that we do, we design it with responsive design in mind. In addition, and there's also actually little things too that I think is important. If, for instance, like when you're on a computer, you can make the button a little bit bigger. When you're on a device, we got to shrink it down to maybe just an icon. So maybe on the computer, it says submit, but on a phone, it may be just an icon that represents submit. So there's a lot of other things that we got to think about. Like we have to be intuitive about, okay, does this really look like a submit button, or does this really look like something that's clickable? So those are other elements to it. On the other note, in regards to designing things that maybe create opportunities, if you're using, say, for instance, a mobile device, that really gets into a different topic in regards to the difference between having a native mobile app, something that gets installed on the computer or that gets downloaded from the Apple Store or the Google Play Store, and something that's just simply a website. So you're getting into a different category there.
So I guess I was thinking more in terms of like what we have developed with our inspection app. You're not going to be hauling your computer around to do an on-site property inspection, but if you can have software that allows you to be much more efficient in how you use your time in an inspection and be able to use your phone or tablet to do that, that's an opportunity I think that is much more available today to develop those solutions, which we have, versus maybe where we were just even a few years ago.
Yes. So, okay, so you're getting into another realm. And again, I'm not trying to dice this too much, but so yes, 100%, the mobile app, being a native mobile app, opens up a lot more flexibility and functionality to be able to do things. As when what you're alluding to is, like, for instance, the fact that we can use the inspection app without any cell phone service because we're leveraging the phone to store that data. And then you start to do things like you can use the accelerometer on the phone, you can use the camera on the phone, you can use the GPS on the phone to be able to leverage that pieces of technology. So that gets into that realm. But I think what also you maybe be interested in is that the fact of the matter that I would say 5-6 years ago, there was a very specific amount of people that were actually able to develop mobile apps, and that's becoming more and more readily available. It's becoming more easier to develop mobile applications, and so that's expanding a company such as us. We're a large company, but we're also still privately owned, and we have the resources to be able to build mobile apps. I mean, that wasn't really a common thing, I would say, 5-6 years ago.
Sure. So shifting gears a little bit, as we kind of, this part of this conversation was driven by the analytics, right?
Yeah.
The observation that more and more people are using mobile devices as opposed to computers. Taking that a step further, are there any maybe demographic observations that we can make that may have shifted as a result of just how the world has changed in the last couple of years?
Yes, definitely. So let me set the stage for that. So all of our websites also, including our resident portal and our public-facing corporate website, we use Google Analytics. So every person that goes to our websites, we're tracking that data. And Google Analytics gives us some pretty in-depth data around the analytics in there. And so what I've seen as a trend is that the age difference between the users, typically sometimes we get people that say, oh, well, maybe the older community doesn't necessarily use technology that much. That is not the case anymore. I'm seeing more and more of that, anywhere from age 55 to 65 range. That is also exponentially increasing in the usage of our online technology. And even using things that you may not even think so. Like, for instance, we have chat features that are available on our resident portal and our corporate website. That age demographic is using chat. Which is something that it wasn't used before. In addition to that, like this is interesting with technology. For instance, for a little while, QR codes kind of were a cool thing. then they kind of died off. But now, as everybody knows, every restaurant you went to, you had to scan a QR code. Right. And so now we've implemented that, like for instance, in our statements, and we can track how many people are using that QR code on our statements to then register for the resident portal. And that's being heavily used too. Yeah. So this is just another side note.
Yeah, but it kind of, what you're illustrating is that certain stereotypes and assumptions that may have been generalities that you could make 5 years ago, I think a lot of people are still holding on to those perspectives. And the reality is people know that the world has changed, but they may not be adjusting to some of these demographic changes. And so, yeah, we hear all the time, we'll be meeting with maybe a prospective new community and they'll say, yeah, we have a large senior population here in our community. They're not going to be accessing the, the online features or some of the technology advantages. And, the reality of what we're seeing, both from a practical and just experiential level, is that that's not true, and the analytics are supporting that we're seeing that more and more people across a whole range of different ages are adopting at higher and higher rates the use of technology.
Definitely,
is that a fair way to put that?
100%. Yeah. Especially in the age demographic. And I've noticed that, and I know that the word is like, the big change, right, is COVID and the way that the world changed during that time period, and everybody had to be at home and be online, and you couldn't physically walk into a bank and all of these different things. That obviously has changed it, but I actually saw this trend happening before then. So I also want to make that as a point too, is that the usage of technology in that age demographic has actually been increasing before even COVID.
So we've seen even in some of our active adult communities, just very, very high levels of engagement on some of the online opportunities, haven't we?
Yeah, exactly. So we were saying that, one, we have the Google Analytics and we have the data behind that, but we also have a pretty good litmus test. We have a very large active adult community. It's age restricted, so in itself, it's already creating this data set for us, and we can look at that community and we see that there's a lot of users using the technology. So we can really pinpoint it even at a community level.
Sure. So just taking a step back, what are some of the actual numbers that we have as far as how many homes do we manage compared to how many residents do we have that are registered for our resident portal, for example?
So we manage about, so the industry term is how many doors you manage, and we manage about 53,000 doors, I think is the last kind of number around that. And if we look at the amount of registered users, we're about 55,000 registered users. And you're like, well, wait a second, how could you have more of that? Well, in each home could have multiple people have an access to the account. And then there's also some numbers where if associations, we no longer manage them, they still have a registered account because they could still go back in and maybe look at historical information. So to answer your question, I would say that if I was to throw out a percentage there, I would say about 75 to 80% of all of our residents have at one point in time registered for the resident portal, our online portal, to access that.
Yeah, so anything over 100% of our units represented is going to indicate a pretty high level of engagement, even recognizing that some of those are going to be multiple people from one unit.
Exactly.
And then you used the phrase just now, have engaged with or been involved with our resident portal at one time. Just a couple of clarifications. The numbers that you're talking about are numbers of communities that we actively manage today, correct? The 55,000 registered users.
Yes. Those are the active associations that we currently manage. Yes.
Right. And then do we have any measurement or anything that gives us feedback as far as active users that are engaged with and using the resident portal on some type of a regular basis?
Yeah, so I mean, our Google Analytics actually tell us active user. I can see right now, if I look at the analytics, that there's 20 people currently logged into the resident portal, and in the last 30 days, I think I just looked at the statistics, and there was about 18,000 people that have logged into the resident portal. There's also a reason for that too, because today, as we're filming this is the first of the month, and this is the time that people log into the resident portal and pay for their assessments. So we're going to get that spike in the amount of users actually using the resident portal between now and the next 5 days, let's say.
Right.
So I can see that analytics and I can see that data.
So just I guess a couple of takeaways, or maybe like one broad one, is that I think people intuitively know there has been a movement towards using online applications and access to different services at a much higher rate today, obviously, than ever before. I think people intuitively know that. Our data is supporting that and makes that case. But then what we were saying before is it's not limited to a narrow demographic of ages. It's basically all people, and we need to keep that in mind and make sure that those types of access points online from our residents and people who live in homeowners associations, that's available for them and known to them that they can use that, because they're more and more, again, all ages, all demographics are getting very well used to using those types of opportunities. Anything else from a demographic or analytics standpoint that you have that would be interesting to share?
Well, as you were saying that, I mean, one of the things that I was thinking about from a standpoint, if I was meeting with a board, or I was talking to a prospective board or an existing board, is that we still here at Action are still leveraging every type of means of communication. I mean, you can still call us. Right. You can still access a live person. Now, another little side note, again, not to get too technical, but we're still leveraging certain technologies. For instance, our phone system tracks that when somebody calls us, it's looking at the phone number that's calling us. It queries our database for that phone number, and it's actually bringing up that homeowner resident information. So it's creating some efficiencies there when you actually call. But you could still pick up the phone and you can still call us. You can chat us. You can submit something online. You can do all of those different things. And then from a manager's perspective or board's perspective, we still think that it's prudent and it's okay to print out a flyer and post those out within the community, and we can still help you to do that as a company. So
yeah. Well, those analytics even go into, again, just feeding how we can be best set up to service our homeowners associations. So, for example, I can look at our data, and I just recently did and show that our average time to answer a phone call in the last 30 days was right around 1.5 minutes. So we can track, even on a day-to-day basis, what our response time is and adjust staffing as needed to be able to address different influxes where if that time gets stretched out longer or whatever we would need to do to make sure that phone calls are being answered in a reasonable amount of time. And then we can also track things like, yes, we're going to talk to people on the phone, but some people, again, are going to more and more prefer to contact us through a chat. And there are certain advantages to that. We know, just based on our data, that chats can be responded to and resolved in about half the amount of time that phone calls are. So for residents and homeowners who are interested in that, and they just want to get their issue resolved as fast as possible, communicating that chat option is available, and that's a way to do that, is something, again, that the analytics bring that to the forefront, allow us to see that and to adjust the service in the same way. And I think the last thing I would point out along those lines, where we want to use that technology most effectively, and again, the data and the information we're able to pull helps us to position ourselves to do this. We want the routine things, the things that people just want to resolve the fastest and easiest way. We want to give them every option to do that, whatever fits where they're coming from best, and more just recognizing that people's preferences are to do that in some technology-driven kind of way. But then also to do that, to create efficiency so that we are freed up to be able to do that in-person connection and phone calls and meetings on the issues that aren't most effectively addressed through technology. And so, again, we can use data and analytics to help to shape that service in that way.
What's your preferred method of contacting your bank or something you need access to? Or
yeah, I got, for me personally, I'm probably I would probably lean more towards a chat, or even maybe go really old school and email. That's like electronic mail. People used to do that. Yeah. No,
what's funny is I just like picking up the phone.
I think if it's going to require,
and I'm the technology guy.
Yeah, no, but I get that. What I was going to put the caveat is I'm moving more and more towards that. But if it's going to require any level of back and forth, then I'd rather pick up the phone. And I guess that's how we want to be able to provide things to our residents, whatever's going to make sense for them to be able to provide that. But again, that's where tracking the information, knowing what the trends are, how residents or their preferences are, and then being able to staff and to respond in an appropriate way based on those preferences. I think that becomes more and more important.
Definitely.
And we've talked, and I guess just as we wrap this up, if you give us any time to talk, we end up talking about baseball. Oh, yeah. And whatever sport it is, right? It's being driven by analytics to how do you best leverage the talent and the resources that you have to produce the best possible result. And we're in the human business. We relate to human beings, and we are providing a human level of service, but we still have a limitation on the number of humans that we have at our disposal, and being able to understand the data, the analytics, and find ways to leverage that to the best possible results so that the experience from the residents, from the board members, from the users is at the most optimal level. That's what we're really looking at and wanting to take advantage of. So I don't know, would you put that any differently?
No, I know that we're going long here. I'll ask you later about if you like a shift on the infield or not.
Yeah, I'm anti that, but anyway, if you don't know what we're talking about, that's okay. But I hope that was helpful, and I would encourage you to check out other videos that we have here on the Uncommon Area.